I watched Marcus sign the withdrawal form with the same Mont Blanc pen I'd given him for our 5th anniversary. His hand moved across the paper with confident strokes, and I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "You're sure about this?" the financial advisor asked, glancing between us. "Mrs. Chen, this is your 401k. You'll need to sign off on the spousal consent form." "Oh, I'm sure," I said, reaching for the pen Marcus offered me. "My husband knows what's best for our family." The lie tasted sweet on my tongue. Marcus squeezed my shoulder, that patronizing gesture I'd endured for 12 years. Sarah's been so stressed with everything. I'm just taking this burden off her plate. We'll invest it properly, make it grow. By we, he meant himself and Melissa, his assistant, the same Melissa who was carrying his child. The same Melissa who would become his wife exactly 6 weeks after our divorce was finalized. I knew all of this because I'd lived it before. 3 months ago, I died in a car accident on I-95. A semi-truck, a patch of black ice, and then nothing. Until I woke up in my bed, in this house, on January 3rd, 2023. 5 months before Marcus asked for a divorce. 6 months before I discovered he'd drained our joint accounts. 7 months before I found out about the baby. I'd been given a second chance, and I was going to use it. "The amount is $847,000, the advisor continued, his discomfort obvious. "Mr. Chen, I have to advise you that early withdrawal from a 401k comes with significant penalties. You're only 42. The IRS will—" "I'm aware of the tax implications," Marcus interrupted, in that dismissive tone he used with everyone he considered beneath him. "I've done my research. We'll pay the penalty and move on. The investment opportunity I have lined up will more than make up for it." I bit my tongue to keep from smiling. His research had consisted of a 10-minute Google search and a conversation with his equally financially illiterate brother. In the original timeline, I discovered this when the tax bill arrived, all $468,500 of it. By then, Marcus had already spent most of the money on a down payment for the beachfront condo where he'd planned to start his new life with Melissa. The penalties had destroyed him. Federal taxes at his income bracket, the early withdrawal penalty, state taxes, additional penalties for improper documentation. It had all added up to nearly 55% of the total withdrawal. He'd declared bankruptcy within a year, but in the original timeline, I'd gone down with him. My name had been on everything. My credit destroyed, my retirement gone. I'd spent 2 years fighting the IRS, working 3 jobs, living in a studio apartment that smelled like mildew and broken dreams. Not this time. This time, I'd been very, very careful. "All set," I said, sliding the signed consent form across the desk. "When will the funds be available?" 3 to 5 business days, the advisor said. He looked at me one more time, as if giving me a chance to change my mind. I smiled at him. A real smile. That night, Marcus took me to dinner at Maria, the Italian restaurant where he'd proposed. His treat, he said, a celebration of our new beginning. "This investment is going to change everything for us," he said. We're reaching across the table to take my hand. His thumb traced circles on my palm, a gesture that used to make me melt. "Tommy's got this whole portfolio strategy mapped out. We're talking 40% returns, Sarah. Maybe more." Tommy, his idiot brother who'd lost $200,000 in crypto the previous year. "That sounds amazing," I said. "You've always been so smart with money." The lie was easier now. I'd had 3 months to practice being the woman I used to be, the woman who believed him, who trusted him, who didn't know that every word out of his mouth was calculated to keep me compliant while he dismantled our life. "I know the divorce hit you hard in the last timeline," I wanted to say. "I know you're sitting here planning your exit while pretending to plan our future. I know Melissa Yi is pregnant. I know everything." But I didn't. I just smiled and ate my pasta and let him think he was winning. The money hit our joint checking account on a Tuesday. I knew because I'd set up alerts on my phone. Marcus transferred $750,000 to his personal account within an hour. He left me $97,000, enough, he probably thought, to keep me from asking questions. Enough to feel generous. I transferred my $97,000 to the new account I'd opened at a different bank, an account he didn't know existed. Then I withdrew every penny I could from our joint savings, another $43,000 that I'd been carefully depositing for the past 3 months. By Wednesday, I'd moved $140,000 into accounts he couldn't touch. By Thursday, I'd served him with divorce papers. I had them delivered to his office. I wanted Melissa to be there. I wanted her to see the beginning of the end, even if she didn't understand it yet. Marcus called me 17 times that day. I didn't answer. Instead, I went to the lawyer's office, a different lawyer than I'd used the first time around. This lawyer was sharp and ruthless and expensive, and I'd been paying her retainer in cash for 2 months. "Everything is in order," Jennifer Park said, reviewing the documents spread across her conference table. "You've done excellent work protecting yourself, Sarah. The 401k withdrawal was in his name only. The consent form you signed has a clause right here that specifies you're not liable for any tax penalties or fees associated with the withdrawal." "I know," I said. "I wrote it myself and asked the advisor to include it." Jennifer raised an eyebrow. "Smart. Most spouses don't think about that." "And the joint accounts?" "Emptied. My half is secured in my personal accounts. I have documentation showing my separate contributions. The house is in both names, but I don't want it. Too many memories." "Bad memories?" Jennifer asked. "The worst," I said, "but they're about to get better." Marcus finally caught me at home that night. He'd used his key even though I'd asked him to start respecting my space, even though he was supposed to be moving out. "What the hell, Sarah?" He was still in his work suit, his tie loosened, his face red. "Divorce papers? Are you insane?" I was folding laundry in the living room. Matching his socks, ironically, I set down the pair I was holding and looked at him. "I want a divorce," I said simply. "I'm not happy. I haven't been happy for a long time." "This is about the money?" "Well, isn't it?" He paced across the hardwood floor I'd picked out when we renovated. "You think I'm stealing from you? That's what this is." "The money is yours," I said. "I signed the consent form. I hope your investment works out." He stopped pacing, looked at me like I'd grown a second head. "Then what? Why now? Why like this?" I could have told him the truth. Could have listed every betrayal, every lie, every moment of condescension and cruelty. Could have mentioned Melissa's name and watched him scramble for excuses. But that wasn't the revenge I wanted. "I just don't love you anymore," I said instead. It's that simple. The words hit him harder than any accusation would have. I could see it in his face, the shock, the wounded ego. Marcus Chen, successful hedge fund manager, beloved by everyone, rejected by his plain, boring wife. "No, you don't mean that," he said. "You're upset. You're emotional. Let's talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about. My lawyer will be in touch." I went upstairs to the guest room where I'd been sleeping for the past week. Locked the door, heard him shouting, then pleading, then finally leaving. It was the best night's sleep I'd had in years. The divorce moved quickly. I'd made sure of that by not fighting over anything except my personal assets. He could have the house, the cars, the furniture. I wanted out, I told Jennifer, and I wanted out fast. Marcus's lawyer tried to argue that I should be responsible for half the tax burden from the 401k withdrawal. But Jennifer shut that down with the consent form clause. I'd signed off on his right to withdraw the money. I hadn't signed off on accepting liability for his tax mistakes. "Your client is a financial professional," Jennifer told his lawyer during a mediation session I attended via video call. "He made an informed decision to withdraw retirement funds early. My client consented to the withdrawal but specifically protected herself from the associated penalties. If Mr. Chen didn't understand the tax implications of his own actions, that's not Mrs. Chen's responsibility." I watched Marcus's face on the screen. The realization was starting to creep in. He'd been so focused on the investment opportunity, so confident in his own expertise, that he hadn't actually calculated the real cost. "How much?" he asked his lawyer. "How much are the penalties?" His lawyer, a silver-haired man named Richard, who charged $800 an hour, shifted uncomfortably. "We're still working with your accountant on the exact figures, though, but preliminary estimates suggest—" "How much, Richard?" "Approximately 55% of the withdrawal amount." The silence on the call was beautiful. "That's impossible," Marcus said, finally. "The penalty is 10%, plus taxes, maybe 30% total." "The early withdrawal penalty is 10%, yes," Richard said. "But you're also subject to federal income tax at your bracket, which is 37%, plus state income tax at 13.3% because you're a California resident. plus additional penalties because the withdrawal exceeded certain thresholds and wasn't properly structured. The total impact? That's $465,000, Marcus said. His face had gone pale. You're telling me I owe almost $500,000 in taxes? Give or take, Richard said. The final number will depend on... Marcus disconnected from the call. I stayed on the line, watching Jennifer try not to smile. Will he be able to pay it? I asked. Not without liquidating the investment he made, Jennifer said. And from what our investigator found, that investment was in a startup company run by his brother. Very risky, very illiquid. He won't be able to access that money quickly, if at all. Good, I said. The divorce was finalized 8 weeks later. I got my personal accounts, my car, and my freedom. Marcus got the house, the tax bill, and Melissa, who had stopped returning his calls once she realized he was broke. I heard through mutual friends that he'd tried to borrow money from his parents. They'd refused. His brother's startup had indeed been a disaster. The company folded 3 months after Marcus invested. He lost everything. The IRS put a lien on the house. He had to sell it at a loss to pay part of the tax bill. He still owed over $200,000, which they were garnishing from his wages at 25% per paycheck. Melissa had an abortion and moved to Portland. Marcus moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in Jersey City and started seeing a therapist for depression. I moved into a brownstone in Brooklyn that I bought in cash using money I'd saved in the 3 months before the divorce. Money from my freelance work I'd started doing in secret the moment I was reborn, knowing I'd need an independent income stream. See, the first time around, I'd been so focused on being the perfect wife that I'd let my career stagnate. I'd worked part-time as a graphic designer, bringing in maybe $30,000 a year, while Marcus climbed the corporate ladder. This time, I'd reached out to every contact I'd made in my first life. I'd taken every freelance project I could handle. So I'd built a portfolio and a reputation and a client list that paid me $15,000 a month. By the time the divorce was final, I had my own thriving business, my own home, and my own life. And I had every penny of my half of our marital assets, carefully documented and protected, plus the $140,000 I'd secured before filing. Marcus had a tax bill and a lesson in humility. 6 months after the divorce, I was having coffee with Rebecca, one of the few friends who'd stayed in touch with both of us. I ran into Marcus last week, she said, stirring sugar into her latte. He looks terrible. Lost weight, dark circles under his eyes. He asked about you. What did you tell him? That you were doing well? Thrivin', actually. Rebecca studied me over the rim of her cup. He seemed surprised. I think he expected you to fall apart without him. Most people did, I said. Can I ask you something? Rebecca leaned forward. That whole thing with the 401k, did you know? About the taxes. I smiled. I did my research. But you let him take it anyway. You signed the form. I did. Rebecca trailed off. That's pretty ruthless, Sarah. I mean, good for you, but did he really deserve that? I thought about the first timeline. The affair, the lies, the way he drained our accounts and left me with nothing but debt and broken promises, the way I'd struggled to survive while he started his new life with Melissa, blissfully unaware that his financial decisions were about to catch up with him. I thought about how in that timeline, I'd begged him to reconsider the withdrawal, how I'd warned him about the penalties. How he'd told me to stop being so negative, to trust him, to let him handle the finances because I didn't understand these things. I thought about how he'd blamed me anyway when the tax bill arrived, how he'd accused me of not stopping him, of not insisting hard enough, of failing him as a wife. Yeah, I said to Rebecca. He really did. She nodded slowly. You know what? I believe you. I don't know what he did, but I believe you. Thank you, I said. We changed the subject, talked about our kids, my new apartment, the gallery show I was planning for my design work. Normal things. Good things. I didn't tell her about the rebirth. I hadn't told anyone. It was my secret, my gift, my second chance, and I'd used it perfectly. A year after the divorce, I was invited to speak at a design conference in Manhattan. It was a big deal. I was on a panel about women entrepreneurs in creative fields, sharing a stage with people I'd admired for years. I wore a red dress I'd bought specifically for the occasion. Red for power, red for confidence, red for the blood that I hadn't shed but had wanted to. The panel went well. I talked about building a business from scratch, about trusting your instincts, about knowing your worth. The audience was engaged, asking questions, taking notes. During the break, a woman approached me. She was in her 30s, well-dressed, with kind eyes and a nervous smile. "Hi," she said. "I'm Jennifer. Not your lawyer, Jennifer. Different Jennifer. I just wanted to thank you for what you said up there, about knowing your worth." "You're welcome," I said. "I'm glad it resonated." "My husband and I are going through a rough patch," she said. "He wants to make this big financial move, and I have a bad feeling about it, but he keeps telling me I'm being paranoid, that I don't understand the business side of things." My spine straightened. "What kind of financial move?" "He wants to cash out his retirement account to invest in a business opportunity, his friend's company. He says it's a sure thing." I felt that cold satisfaction again, that sense of cosmic justice. "How much is in the account?" I asked. "About $600,000. "And how old is your husband?" 45. I took a business card from my purse and wrote a name and number on the back. "This is my lawyer. Tell her I sent you. And before you sign anything, and anything at all, I want you to have her review it, okay?" Jennifer looked at the card, then at me. "Do you think I should leave him?" "I think you should protect yourself," I said. "Whatever you decide to do about the marriage, protect yourself first. Make sure your name isn't on any tax liability. Make sure you have your own accounts, your own money. Make sure if he makes a mistake, it's his mistake, not yours." "But we're married. Aren't we supposed to be a team?" "A team requires two people pulling in the same direction," I said. "If he's not listening to your concerns, if he's dismissing your instincts, if he's making you feel crazy for being cautious, that's not a team. That's a dictatorship." She nodded slowly. "Can I ask, how did you know about the retirement account thing? Is it that common?" "Common enough," I said. "Men who think they're smarter than they are often make expensive mistakes. The question is whether you're going to pay for those mistakes with them." "I don't want to," she said quietly. "Then don't," I said. "Call my lawyer, protect yourself, and trust your gut. It's trying to save you." She thanked me and left. I never saw her again, but I hoped she listened. I hoped she saved herself before she had to live through what I'd lived through. I hoped she didn't need a second chance to get it right. That night, I went back to my brownstone and opened a bottle of wine. The good stuff, a Bordeaux I'd been saving for a special occasion. This felt special enough. I sat in my living room, surrounded by furniture I'd chosen, art I'd collected, books I'd bought. Everything in this space was mine, earned by me, chosen by me. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "This is Marcus. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. You deserved better. I hope you're happy." I stared at the message for a long time. In the first timeline, he'd never apologized, never acknowledged what he'd done. He'd blamed me for the financial disaster, for the divorce, for his unhappiness. He'd played the victim until the day I died. But this timeline was different. This Marcus had lost everything because of his own decisions. This Marcus couldn't blame me because I'd done everything he'd asked. I'd signed the consent form. I'd let him take the money. I'd even tried to save the marriage before filing for divorce. This Marcus had no one to blame but himself. I typed a response. "I am happy. I hope you find your way. Goodbye, Marcus." Then I blocked the number. I didn't need his apology. Well, I didn't need his acknowledgement. I didn't need anything from him at all. I had already won. 2 years after the divorce, my design firm was thriving. I'd hired 3 employees, rented a small office space in Dumbo, and landed several major clients. My work was featured in design magazines. I was invited to speak at conferences across the country. I dated occasionally, nothing serious, just exploring what I wanted in a partner now that I knew what I didn't want. It was fun, easy, no pressure. I'd also started volunteering with a nonprofit that helped women escape financial abuse. I taught workshops on understanding your finances, protecting your assets, recognizing the warning signs of economic control. I never told my story directly, but I think the women in those workshops could tell I'd been through something, that I understood their fear and their shame and their desperation. The most important thing I told them is to know your options. Know what you own, know what you owe, know what you are signing, because the minute you sign something without understanding it, you give someone else power over your life. After one workshop, a woman stayed behind. She was in her 50s, well-dressed, but with that haunted look I recognized. "My husband wants me to co-sign a business loan," she said. "He says it's for our future, but I don't trust him. He's been lying about money for years." "Then don't sign," I said simply, "but if I don't, he'll leave me." "If you do, you'll lose everything when his business fails." She started crying. "How do you know it will fail?" "I don't," I said. "But you do. That's why you're here. That's why you came to this workshop. You already know the answer. You're just looking for permission to trust yourself." "I'm scared," she whispered. "Being scared means you're smart," I said. "Being scared means you're paying attention. Listen to that fear. Let it save you." She left with information about lawyers, financial advisors, and resources for women planning to divorce. I didn't know if she'd use them, but I'd planted the seed. That's what I could do now in this timeline. Plant seeds. Help other women avoid the mistakes I'd made. Give them the tools to save themselves before they needed a second chance. 3 years after the divorce, I met someone. His name was David, and he was nothing like Marcus. He was a high school teacher, passionate about literature, hopelessly bad at anything involving money. He was honest about this, was upfront, almost apologetic. "I'm terrible with finances," he told me on our third date. "I have a financial advisor who handles everything because if I tried to do it myself, I'd probably accidentally commit tax fraud." I laughed. "At least you're self-aware." "I am extremely aware of my limitations," he said. "It's one of my better qualities." He was also kind, patient, genuinely interested in my work, my thoughts, my life. He didn't try to fix me or manage me or diminish me. He just liked me, as I was. It was startling. How revolutionary that felt. "Tell me about your ex-husband," he said one night, 6 months into our relationship. We were in his apartment, cooking dinner together, and the question came out of nowhere. "Why do you want to know?" I asked. "Because you never talk about him," David said. And I get the sense that's deliberate, like there's this whole part of your life you've locked away." I chopped vegetables while I considered my answer. He wasn't a good person. He wasn't good to me. And I'm glad he's in my past. "Did he hurt you?" "Yes," I said, "but not the way you're thinking. He didn't hit me. He just diminished me. Made me feel small and stupid and worthless. Lied to me, cheated on me, stole from me." David stopped stirring the sauce. "Jesus, Sarah." "It's okay," I said. "I got out. I got even. I'm fine now." "Got even how?" I smiled. "Let's just say he learned an expensive lesson about tax law." David studied me for a moment. Then he started laughing. "You're kind of terrifying, you know that? Is that a problem?" "Are you kidding? It's the hottest thing I've ever heard." He pulled me close. He kissed my forehead. "Remind me to never piss you off. Don't steal from me or lie to me and we'll be fine." I said, "Deal," he said. 4 years after the divorce, I received an invitation to Marcus's wedding. I almost threw it away without opening it, but curiosity won. Inside was a formal invitation to the marriage of Marcus Chen and someone named Andrea Hoffman. The ceremony would be at a small venue in New Jersey. Cocktail attire requested. There was a handwritten note tucked inside. "I know this is probably weird, but I wanted you to know. You were right about everything. I was an idiot. I've learned a lot since then. I hope you can be happy for me. M." I showed it to David that night. "Are you going to go?" he asked. "God, no," I said, "but it's nice to know he's moved on. Though, found someone else to inflict himself on." "You think he'll mess it up again?" "Probably," I said, "but that's not my problem anymore." I threw the invitation away and forgot about it. 5 years after the divorce, I sold my design firm for $2.3 million. I'd built it from nothing, from midnight freelance sessions and cold emails and sheer determination. Now it was a respected agency with high-profile clients and a talented team, and a larger firm wanted to acquire it. The day the sale went through, I sat in my lawyer's office, Jennifer, still my lawyer after all these years, and signed the papers. "Congratulations," she said. "You should be very proud." "I am," I said. "I really am." "What are you going to do now?" "Travel," I said. "Take a year off, see the world, figure out what I want to do next." "And David?" "He's coming with me. We're going to rent out both our places and just go. No plan, no schedule, just adventure." Jennifer smiled. "You've come a long way from the woman who sat in this office 5 years ago, ready to walk away from everything." That woman saved my life, I said. By being willing to lose everything, I got to keep the things that mattered. That night, David and I celebrated at the same Italian restaurant where Marcus had taken me the night he withdrew my 401k. I'd chosen it deliberately, reclaiming the space, rewriting the memory. To new beginnings, David said, raising his glass. To second chances, I said. We clinked glasses, and I thought about everything that had led me to this moment. The death that had sent me back, the knowledge I'd used to save myself, the revenge I'd crafted so carefully. I thought about Marcus, struggling with his tax debt and his mistakes and the consequences of his own arrogance. I thought about the woman I'd been, trusting, naive, so desperate to be loved that I'd ignored every red flag. And I thought about the woman I was now, strong, independent, unafraid. "What are you thinking about?" David asked. "Justice," I said, "and how sweet it tastes." He laughed, thinking I was joking, but I wasn't. The universe had given me a gift, a chance to relive the worst period of my life with full knowledge of what was coming. I could have used it to save my marriage, to warn Marcus, to prevent the disasters that were heading toward both of us. Instead, I'd used it to save myself, to let him make his own mistakes while protecting myself from the fallout. To build a life so far beyond what I'd had before that the old me wouldn't have believed it possible. Some people might call that cruel, might say I should have been the bigger person, should have warned him, helped him, saved him from himself. But those people hadn't lived through what I'd lived through, hadn't felt the betrayal, the humiliation, the crushing weight of being blamed for someone else's mistakes. Those people hadn't earned their second chance. I had, and I'd used it perfectly. 6 years after the divorce, I got a Facebook message from Melissa. I'd forgotten she existed, honestly. The woman who'd been carrying Marcus's child in the first timeline, who disappeared from his life when the money ran out. "Hi, Sarah," the message read. "I know this is random, but I wanted to reach out. I'm sober now, 3 years clean. And part of my recovery is making amends. I wanted to apologize for my part in your divorce. I knew Marcus was married when we started our affair. I knew it was wrong. I'm sorry for the pain I caused you." I stared at the message for a long time. In the first timeline, I'd never known about Melissa until after the divorce. Marcus had hidden the affair well. By the time I found out, she was already gone, and it didn't matter anymore. But in this timeline, I'd known from the moment I woke up reborn. I'd known about her, about the baby she was carrying, or would carry if things played out the same way, about her role in Marcus's betrayal. And I'd done nothing to stop it, nothing to expose it. I just let it happen, knowing she'd leave when the money dried up. "Thank you for your message," I typed back. "I appreciate your honesty. I hope you're doing well in your recovery," she replied immediately. "I am. I'm in a much better place now. I heard you're doing amazing. Successful business, great relationship. I'm happy for you." "Thank you," I wrote. "I hope you found happiness too." "I have," she said. "I'm married now to a good man. We have a daughter. I'm a teacher. Life is simple, but good." "That's wonderful," I said, and meant it. There was a pause, and then, "Can I ask you something? Marcus said you left him right after he made some big investment. He always seemed confused about why you'd leave right when you were about to make so much money. Do you mind me asking what really happened?" I smiled at my phone. "I left because I deserved better," I typed. The money was never real. The investment was a scam, but I knew that. I tried to tell him, but he wouldn't listen. So I protected myself and let him learn the hard way. "Wow," she replied. That's actually kind of badass." "Thanks," I said. "Good luck with everything, Melissa." "I mean that." "You too, Sarah. And again, I'm really sorry." I closed the chat and deleted the conversation. It was done. All of it. The anger, the betrayal, the need for revenge. It was all behind me now. I'd won. Not just against Marcus, but against the universe that had tried to break me. And it felt glorious. 7 years after the divorce, David proposed. We were in Santorini, watching the sunset from our hotel balcony, and he got down on one knee with a ring he'd had custom made. A sapphire, because I told him I didn't want a diamond. "Sarah," he said, "you are the strongest, smartest, most incredible person I've ever met. You've taught me what it means to be brave, what it means to stand up for yourself, what it means to build a life you're proud of. I love you. Will you marry me?" I said yes. We got married 6 months later in a small ceremony in Brooklyn. Just close friends and family. Nothing fancy, nothing performative. Jennifer was there, sitting in the front row with her wife. Rebecca was there, crying happy tears. David's parents were there, beaming with pride. My parents were there too, finally understanding that I didn't need their approval or their validation, that I'd built a life beyond their expectations and their fears. During the reception, I stepped outside for air. The venue was a renovated warehouse with a rooftop garden, and I stood among the fairy lights and potted plants, looking out at the Brooklyn skyline. "Happy?" Jennifer asked, Wing appearing beside me with 2 glasses of champagne. "Deliriously," I said. "You've earned it," she said. "Everything you have, you've earned." "I know," I said. "That's what makes it so sweet." We stood in comfortable silence, sipping our champagne, watching the city lights. "Can I ask you something?" Jennifer said finally. "That whole thing with Marcus and the 401k, the tax penalties, how did you know? I mean, really know. You were so confident, so sure." I looked at her. She'd been my lawyer, my advocate, my ally for 7 years. She'd helped me build this life. She deserved the truth, but the truth was impossible. "I did my research," I said instead. "I knew what kind of man he was. I knew he'd make the wrong choice if I gave him the chance. So I gave him the chance and protected myself from the consequences." "That's not an answer," Jennifer said. "It's the only answer I have," I said. She nodded, accepting this. "Well, whatever the truth is, I'm glad you did what you did. You saved yourself. That takes courage." "Or spite," I said. "Sometimes they're the same thing," she replied. We clinked glasses and went back inside to celebrate. 8 years after the divorce, I received a letter from Marcus's lawyer. Marcus had died. Heart attack. He was 52. The letter was formal, explaining that I was listed as a beneficiary in his will. He'd left me $50,000 and a handwritten note. I debated throwing the whole thing away, but curiosity won again. The note was written on expensive stationery in Marcus's precise handwriting. "Dear Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I don't know if you'll care. I don't know if you'll even read this, but I needed to write it anyway. You were right about everything. The investment was a disaster. The tax penalties destroyed me. I lost everything because I was too arrogant to listen, too proud to admit I didn't know what I was doing. I blamed you for a long time, told myself you should have stopped me, should have fought harder, should have been on my team. But the truth is, you tried to tell me. You tried to warn me. And I dismissed you, belittled you, made you feel small for being cautious. You signed that consent form with a clause protecting yourself from my mistakes. At the time, I thought you were being petty. Now I understand you were being smart. You knew I wouldn't listen. You knew I'd destroy myself. So you made sure I destroyed myself alone. That's what I deserve. I know that now. I've spent the last 8 years trying to rebuild. I remarried. Andrea is a good woman. Patient, kind, everything you tried to be before I broke you. We had a child together, a daughter. I named her Hope because that's what she gave me. I've paid off the tax debt, rebuilt my credit, found a new job. It's not the life I thought I'd have, but it's honest. It's real. I'm leaving you this money because I want you to know I'm sorry. I'm sorry for every lie, every betrayal, every moment I made you feel less than you were. You deserve better than me. I hope you found it. Marcus." I read the letter 3 times, then I put it in a drawer and called David. "Marcus died," I said when he answered. "Oh," David said. "I'm sorry. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said. "Why, he left me $50,000 and an apology letter." "Do you want the money?" I thought about it. $50,000 was nothing to me now. I had millions in investments, property, savings. I didn't need Marcus's money, but taking it felt like closure, like the final payment on a debt he could never fully repay. "Yes," I said. "I want it." I donated the entire $50,000 to the nonprofit where I volunteered, the organization that helped women escape financial abuse. They used it to fund an emergency assistance program, immediate cash grants for women who needed to leave their abusers but didn't have the resources. They named it the Sarah Chen Emergency Fund. Marcus's final gift became my legacy. His apology became hope for women who needed it most. It felt right. 10 years after the divorce, I was invited to speak at a TED conference about entrepreneurship and resilience. I'd been avoiding public speaking at this level. TED Talks felt too exposed, too vulnerable, but my publicist convinced me it was time. "You have a story people need to hear," she said. "Not the revenge part, although that's great, but the rebuilding part, how you went from nothing to everything, how you trusted yourself when no one else did." So I agreed. I spent weeks writing the talk, revising it, practicing it, making sure every word was perfect. The day of the talk, I stood backstage, wearing my power red dress, my heart pounding. "You've got this," David said, squeezing my hand. He'd flown across the country to be there to support me. "I know," I said. "I'm ready." I walked on stage to applause. The lights were bright, the audience invisible. But I could feel their energy, their anticipation. 10 years ago, I lost everything. My marriage ended. My finances were in shambles. I was broke, broken, and certain I'd never recover. I paused, letting the words sink in. But I had something my ex-husband didn't have. I had the willingness to accept reality, to see my situation clearly, to make hard choices based on truth instead of hope. I told them about building my business, about trusting my instincts, about protecting myself even when it meant being called cold or calculating. I didn't tell them about the rebirth. I didn't tell them about the 401k trap, or the tax penalties, or the deliberate revenge, but I told them the truth that mattered, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is save yourself, even if it means letting someone else sink. "People will call you selfish," I said. "They'll say you should have been more understanding, more forgiving, more willing to sacrifice yourself for others." I looked out at the audience, at the sea of faces hanging on every word. But here's what I learned. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. You can't fix someone who doesn't think they're broken. All you can do is protect yourself and build something beautiful from the ashes of what you lost. The applause was thunderous. After the talk, dozens of people approached me. Women, mostly, with stories eerily similar to mine. Husbands who'd made terrible financial decisions, partners who dismissed their concerns, relationships where they'd been made to feel stupid for being cautious. "What should I do?" they asked. "So how did you know when to leave?" "You already know," I told them. "You're asking because you need permission. So here it is. I give you permission to trust yourself, to protect yourself, to save yourself before you need a miracle to survive." One woman, tears streaming down her face, grabbed my hand. "My husband wants to cash out his retirement to invest in crypto. I've tried to stop him. He won't listen." "Then protect yourself," I said. "Make sure your name isn't on any of his decisions. Document everything. And if he goes through with it, make sure his mistakes are his alone." "That feels wrong," she said. "Like I'm abandoning him." "He's abandoning you," I said, "by not listening, by not respecting your concerns, by prioritizing his ego over your financial security. You're not abandoning him. You're refusing to drown with him." She nodded, still crying. Thank you for saying that." "Good luck," I said. "You're going to need it, but you're also going to survive. And eventually, you're going to thrive." She left, and I hoped she listened, hoped she saved herself, hoped she didn't need what I'd needed to get free. 12 years after the divorce, 15 years after I was reborn, I sat in my home office reviewing the final draft of my book. It was a memoir, sort of, part business advice, part survival guide, part cautionary tale. I'd changed names, altered details, protected the guilty and the innocent alike, but the core truth was there. How I'd been broken, how I'd rebuilt, how I'd learned to trust myself above all others. The chapter about the 401k was titled Expensive Lessons. I'd written it carefully, focusing on the importance of understanding financial decisions, protecting yourself from someone else's mistakes, making sure you're not legally liable for choices you opposed. I never admitted I'd known about the penalties, never confessed I'd let Marcus walk into the trap with full knowledge of what would happen, but anyone reading between the lines would understand. David came into the office with coffee. "How's it going?" "It's done," I said. "The book is done." "How does it feel?" "Like closure," I said. "Like the final chapter of a story I've been writing for 15 years. He kissed the top of my head. "I'm proud of you. For everything you've survived. Everything you've built." "Thank you," I said. "I'm proud of me too." The book was published 6 months later. It became a bestseller, well, not because of the revenge, though readers loved that part, but because of the hope, the proof that you could lose everything and still build something beautiful. I did a book tour, spoke at universities, gave interviews to podcasts and magazines and television shows. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. How did you do it? How did you go from rock bottom to this? And I always gave the same answer. I trusted myself. Even when everyone else told me I was wrong, I trusted what I knew to be true, and I protected myself first, before trying to save anyone else. It was the truth, just not the whole truth. The whole truth was that I'd been given a gift, a second chance, an opportunity to relive the worst period of my life with full knowledge of what was coming. And I'd used it not to fix what was broken, but to save what mattered. Myself. 15 years after the divorce, 18 years after I died and was reborn, I received a message on LinkedIn from Marcus's daughter. Her name was Hope. She was 17. "Hi, Sarah," the message read. "I know this is weird, but I'm doing a school project on successful entrepreneurs, and my mom suggested I reach out to you. My dad, Marcus Chen, was your ex-husband. He passed away when I was 8, but he talked about you sometimes, said you were the smartest person he'd ever met. Would you be willing to do a short phone interview?" I stared at the message for a long time. Marcus's daughter, the child he'd had with Andrea, his second wife, the daughter he'd named Hope after losing everything else. I could ignore the message, block her, pretend I never saw it, but she was 17. Innocent. Just a kid trying to complete a school assignment. "Sure," I typed back. "I'd be happy to help. Here's my phone number." She called the next day. "Thank you so much for doing this," she said. Her voice was young, nervous, excited. "I really appreciate it." "Of course," I said. "What would you like to know?" "Well, my project is about women who overcame adversity to build successful businesses. And you're like a perfect example. You went from a messy divorce to building a multi-million-dollar company. How did you do it?" "Hard work," I said, "and knowing my worth." "My dad said you were really smart about money, that you taught him important lessons about financial planning." I almost laughed. "Did he?" "Yeah, he said he made a lot of mistakes when you were married, but you were always careful, always protected yourself. He said he wished he'd listened to you more. Your father was a complicated man," I said carefully, "but I'm glad he learned from his mistakes." "Can I ask you something kind of personal?" Hope said. "Sure. Do you think people can change? Like, really change? Because my dad was kind of a mess when I was little. My mom has told me stories. But by the time I was old enough to remember, he was different. Better. He was a good dad." "Yes," I said. "I think people can change, if they want to, if they're willing to face what they've done, and do better." "Do you think he changed because of what happened with you? Like, do you think losing everything made him a better person?" I thought about that. About Marcus in the first timeline, blaming everyone but himself, never growing, never learning, and Marcus in this timeline, so forced to confront his own arrogance, his own mistakes, eventually becoming the father this girl remembered. "Maybe," I said, "sometimes losing everything is the only way to figure out what really matters." "That's really wise," Hope said. "Can I quote you in my paper?" Of course. We talked for another 20 minutes. She asked about my business, my book, my advice for young women entering the workforce. I gave her good answers. Thoughtful answers. The kind of advice I wish someone had given me at 17. "Thank you so much," she said at the end of the call. "This is going to make my project so much better. And I know this is weird, but I'm glad my dad knew you, even if things didn't work out. It sounds like you were important to him." "He was important to me too," I said. And it was true, just not in the way she thought. As after we hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. Marcus had changed, had become a good father, had built a life that mattered, even if it was smaller than the one he'd imagined. Had my revenge made him better? Had letting him fail taught him lessons he couldn't have learned any other way? I didn't know. And honestly, it didn't matter. I hadn't let him take the money to teach him a lesson. I'd let him take it to protect myself, to save myself from drowning with him. If he'd learned something from it, if he'd become a better person, that was a side effect, not my goal. My goal had been survival, and I'd survived. 20 years after the divorce, I threw myself a party. Not a birthday party or an anniversary, just a celebration of being alive, of being happy, of having built a life beyond my wildest dreams. I rented a rooftop venue in Manhattan, invited everyone who'd been part of my journey, hired a caterer and a bartender and a DJ. David gave a toast. To Sarah, he said, raising his glass, who taught me that strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up, dusting yourself off, and building something even better than what you lost. Jennifer gave a toast. To the most strategic client I've ever had. You didn't just win your divorce, you won your life. Rebecca gave a toast. To my friend who went through hell and came out the other side with fire in her eyes and steel in her spine. I've never been more proud to know anyone. And then I gave a toast. 20 years ago, I said, I was in the worst place of my life. My marriage was ending, my finances were a disaster. I felt lost and broken and certain I'd never recover. I looked around the room at all these faces. These people who'd supported me, believed in me, helped me build this impossible life. But I had something precious. I had knowledge. I knew what was going to happen. I knew the mistakes that were about to be made. And I made a choice. I paused, feeling emotional. I chose to save myself, not to save my marriage, not to save the person who was hurting me, not to be the bigger person or the better person or the more forgiving person. I chose me. Tears were streaming down my face now. And that choice, that selfish, self-preserving, utterly ruthless choice, saved my life. It gave me everything I have now. This career, this relationship, this joy. I raised my glass. So here's to being selfish. Here's to trusting yourself. Here's to knowing your worth and refusing to accept less. And here's to second chances, even when you have to create them yourself. The applause was deafening. I told them the truth, even if I hadn't told them all of it. I had created my own second chance. Not by being reborn, that was the universe's gift, but by being brave enough to use that gift for myself instead of wasting it on someone who didn't deserve saving. That night, after everyone left, David and I stood on the rooftop looking at the city lights. You've never told me the whole story, he said, about Marcus, about what really happened. I know, I said. Are you ever going to? I thought about it, about the rebirth, about living those months twice, about knowing exactly what would happen and using that knowledge to destroy the man who destroyed me. No, I said finally. Some things are just for me. Fair enough, David said. He pulled me close. I love you, all of you, even the parts you don't share. I love you too, I said. And I meant it, because this love, this honest, equal, respectful love, was only possible because I'd saved myself first, because I'd been ruthless enough to let Marcus fail, because I'd chosen myself. 25 years after the divorce, I was 73 years old. David and I had been married for 18 years. We'd traveled the world, built a life full of adventure and purpose and joy. My business had been sold decades ago, but I still consulted occasionally, still gave talks, still wrote articles about entrepreneurship and resilience. I'd written 3 more books, each one a little more honest than the last, but I never wrote about the rebirth. I never confessed the full truth of what I'd done. Some secrets were meant to stay secret. I was at a coffee shop in Brooklyn, a place I'd been going for 20 years. When I saw her, she was in her 60s, well-dressed, confident. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. Then she approached my table. Sarah Chen? She said. Yes? You don't remember me, she said, but we met once, 15 years ago. You were speaking at a design conference. I told you my husband wanted to cash out his retirement to invest in his friend's business. I remembered, the woman who'd reminded me of myself. You gave me your lawyer's card, she continued, and you told me to protect myself. I did, I said. Did you? She smiled. I did. I went to see your lawyer. She helped me protect my assets before my husband made his investment. And when the investment failed, which it did within 6 months, I was safe. My money was separate. My credit was intact. I'm glad, I said. I divorced him a year later, she said. Best decision I ever made? I'm remarried now, to a wonderful man. I have my own consulting business. I'm happy. That's wonderful, I said, meaning it. I wanted to thank you, she said, for trusting me with the truth. For not sugarcoating it? For telling me it was okay to save myself first? You saved yourself, I said. I just gave you permission. Sometimes that's all we need, she said. Permission to trust what we already know. She thanked me again and left. I sat there for a long time, thinking about all the women I'd helped over the years. All the people who'd heard my story, the sanitized, a socially acceptable version, and used it to save themselves. I thought about Marcus, dead for 17 years, his mistakes long forgiven by everyone but me. I thought about the revenge I'd taken, the trap I'd set, the way I'd watched him destroy himself while protecting myself from the fallout. Some people would call it cruel. Some people would call it justice. I called it survival, and I'd never regretted it for a single moment. 30 years after the divorce, I was asked to give a commencement speech at my alma mater. I was 80 years old, still sharp, still strong, still absolutely certain I'd made the right choices. Graduates, I said, looking out at the sea of young faces, you're about to enter a world that will tell you to be generous, to be forgiving, to sacrifice yourself for others, to be a team player. I paused. And those are all good qualities, important qualities. But here's what they won't tell you. It's okay to be selfish. It's okay to protect yourself. It's okay to let someone fail if saving them means destroying yourself. I saw some parents shift uncomfortably in their seats, but the graduates were listening, really listening. The world will punish you for self-preservation. They'll call you cold, calculating, ruthless. They'll tell you that you should have done more, tried harder, sacrificed more. I smiled. Let them talk. You'll be too busy thriving to care. The graduates erupted in applause. After the ceremony, dozens of them approached me with questions, with stories, with requests for advice, and I gave it freely, the wisdom I'd earned through pain and rebirth and ruthless self-preservation. Trust yourself, protect yourself. Toy, save yourself first, because in the end, that's all you can control. Not whether people change, not whether they learn, not whether justice is served, just whether you survive. And survival, beautiful, triumphant, utterly selfish survival, is its own form of revenge. That night, David and I sat in our brownstone, the same one I'd bought 30 years ago with money I'd protected from Marcus's destruction. Good speech, he said. Thank you, I said. Do you ever regret it? He asked. Any of it? I knew what he was asking. Did I regret the trap, the revenge, the ruthless way I'd saved myself while letting Marcus sink? No, I said. Not even for a second. Good, David said. You shouldn't. We sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd found each other after surviving our own disasters. And I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who died in a car crash and was given a second chance. She would be proud of what I'd become, proud of the choices I'd made, proud that I'd been brave enough, ruthless enough, selfish enough to save myself. And in the end, that was the only opinion that mattered. Mine.